Thanks for checking out this movie review video. This is for the 2008 film Outpost, and this review is for subscriber Cambrel Green. This was one that they said was on Tubi, and actually it has two sequels, which they informed me that the second film in this trilogy, basically, is actually pretty solid. So I might end up checking that out. Not sure if I'll review it or not, but yeah, if you want to watch it, it's on Tubi at the moment when I'm doing this review. Directed by Steve Barker, who also did Outpost Black Sun, which was the first sequel, and The Resort, but The Resort is spelled with a Z, not an S. Written by Rae Brunton, who also wrote scripts for Outpost Black Sun and Outpost Rise of the Spetsnaz, which is the third one, and also a film called Two Pigeons. And story was done by Steve Barker as well as Kieran Parker. A few sound effects from this film allegedly, were actually lifted directly from Return to Castle Wolfenstein, which is a video game. I don't know if that's accurate or not, but I saw it online and I was like, maybe? I tried to kind of listen for something like that, wasn't sure if I could pick something like that out, but then again, I'm also not super familiar with that video game. I think I played it back in the day, but not super familiar. A war scenario for the story setting is effectively established immediately within this film. I do like that. They do a great job of kind of throwing you right into the thick of things and being like, look, this is a war situation. This is the location we're in. They also make it appear extremely drab. Like, that's one of the things. They leech color out of the film so much that it's just like drab, which I feel like they do that a lot with kind of like war films. I think that's something they did with Band of Brothers, HBO Band of Brothers show. And I think that it's good in the sense that it kind of gives you like this depressing, drab feeling about war in general. So I think it kind of fits along with other films kind of like that. Or that was a series, but yeah. So it's good to know immediately where you are in a film. So the setting is good. They then establish that this is basically about a group of mercenaries, and then they introduce their client. Well, not the actual client, kind of like the middleman, the bad guy in a sense, the guy who's kind of bringing the money and saying, okay, you need to follow me, protect me, and then he eventually says, oh, I have very rich backers, in essence, and then that's when it clicks in your mind, and you're like, rich backers, especially in a situation like this, usually means terrible people who want to get a hold of something for nefarious reasons. And we don't know for sure because they don't really go into that. It's just kind of about what they end up finding and everything that happens after that. But there are some theories. I do have a theory about that, which I'll talk about in the very end of this. Also, this review is probably not going to be as long as my usual reviews because even though this film actually feels like it moves at a pretty good pace, there's a lot that's just kind of like repeated within it. There are a lot of moments of the characters kind of walking around, being in these kind of like dread-filled, tense moments. It's very ambiance and atmosphere driven, to be honest, and that's fine because they did a good job with it, but for that reason, it's also not like extremely highly rated by me when I actually get to the rating at the end. Good point that people don't hire mercenaries unless they have secrets that they need to keep. One of the mercenaries actually said that when they were on their way to the bunker that they end up going to. He's literally like, this guy's paying us. People don't pay us mercenaries for stuff like this unless they have secrets that they're hiding, which that's the first kind of nod to the audience of, yes, there's something else going on here. It's not cut and dry, which, just by watching the film, you're assuming that that's going to be the case, to be honest. While the team of mercenaries are going through the woods, I just kept thinking about the film Dog Soldiers. It really had a beginning of Dog Soldiers kind of feel to it. Ended up not going that direction at all. Didn't really have any other similarities to Dog Soldiers, but I was kind of like, is this going to end up being like Dog Soldiers with zombies, kind of? Because I was getting like a zombie feel, especially when you're going to like an old like World War II bunker. That's kind of like probably zombies. But they actually kind of changed it a little bit. It was more ghost soldiers, which is a cool concept, honestly. I did really enjoy the concept behind this film. And I'll kind of elaborate a little bit on that as I go. The screeching of the communication equipment when they were going going to the bunker and when they were at the bunker seems to be an indicator of something going awry in the area. That gives you the idea that once they get within kind of like a certain radius, their communication's not going to work, which then signals to the audience these people are screwed if they can't get out of where they just went to. And also on top of that, you're wondering what is going on. Like, what is kind of like blocking their communication? Well, in the end, we find out it's really, these ghost soldiers. Like, they have the ability to do that. And it's probably because, like, that magnetic, like, electromagnetic field that kind of, like, made them who they are as ghost soldiers, and it's kind of keeping them there, is probably, like, they partially have some of that. So I don't know if they're intentionally blocking the communications or it's just something that naturally happens because the state of their, I don't know, souls, I guess it is, or their apparitions, I don't know. The exploration of the bunker is effective at creating and maintaining tension and a good environment. Especially since it's dark, you feel like anything could pop out at any moment. At least initially. That's before they get the power going. I really did like that initial moment of them just kind of exploring. They actually could have gone longer on that, in my opinion, when it was still dark, because it's good. And it makes you feel kind of claustrophobic. It makes the tension feel even higher because of the fact that these are very close quarters. It's dark and it's underground. So you really don't have any options for like places to go if something starts going awry. And as an audience member, obviously you know this. You feel this, and that helps kind of drive up the scare factor, the creepiness, the tension, all of that good stuff. Once the character of Hunt comments about having very rich backers, you just know there's something very nefarious on their minds. Yes, and like I said, I'll postulate on what was really going on there at the very end. I figured there was going to be a Nazi aspect to this, and when it comes to more recent horror films featuring Nazis, it usually has to do with the occult and messed up experiments. It almost always is that. Whenever there's a film like this, Nazis end up coming into it, and if they do, it always focuses in some capacity on the occult. Whether it's the occult ends up creating zombies or the occult creates these ghost soldiers, it's a very common thing because I think it's such an alluring thing that people have become aware about is that the Third Reich was so interested in and focused on the occult because they were trying to basically find like any sort of leg up they could get in the war, and they were thinking, well, if we can like figure out a way to get like supernatural powers, or in this essence they were basically trying to create non-corporeal soldiers who could just take everyone out and not like actually lose their lives, even though their physical bodies, they did kind of lose their lives. But yeah, so there is just this whole kind of subgenre of films that has to do with like Nazi occult stuff, and this one fits directly in there. Now I'm glad that it didn't retread a bunch of ground that a bunch of these other types of films have done. It really kind of brought in its own idea and fleshed it out, and I thought it was interesting. So Hunt says it would be a 48-hour job. When they're in the bunker, he's searching through files and film, and I got the feeling at that point, I'm like, how is this just going to be a 48-hour job? Because he's like taking a lot of time to go through all these files and stuff. Like, but then again, it's like, why was he even going through those? Because what he was really looking for was this big piece of equipment. So I don't know. It feels like maybe that was like a filler thing. Didn't really understand it, but it gave me the idea that it didn't make a whole lot of sense that he was thinking it would be a short job. Now, that was probably some BS that was fed to him by his backers because, well, I'm not going to say it now, but this fits into my theory at the end. Between the ghostly-looking, somewhat alive guy who ended up being like the commander of all of them, or would it be commander? I don't know. Someone can correct me on that. The leader of the ghost soldiers. So between the ghostly-looking, somewhat alive guy and the glimpses of soldiers that appear and disappear, it's hard to figure out how the film will actually end up coming out, how it'll come together, and what's really going on. So I like the fact that they keep a good air of mystery for a good amount of time with the film. I think that helps with making it feel like it has better pacing than maybe it actually does. Because like I said, like The story doesn't move very fast, but it feels like it moves faster than it does. I think another thing being it's only an hour and a half, so they're not like stretching things out too much or anything like that, but keeping people kind of hooked in, like giving little kind of like hints and clues at a good pace, that's what keeps people engaged, and I think they did a pretty solid job with that. Pretty effective scene when the one mercenary goes in the body room with the flickering light. Creepy, very creepy. That was Jordan, the character of Jordan, who eventually gets it in the end. And I think he's supposed to be, other than the character of DC, Jordan, I think, is supposed to be the other character you as an audience member connect with most, because he seems to be the most down-to-earth. He seems to be the most intelligent. He seems to care the most about keeping his life and what's going on there. And he seems to be the least like an actual mercenary. Because typically, when you think about mercenaries, you're thinking about people hired to kill or hired to protect, which could include killing. I mean, these are people willing to go to war for money. So it's a very different breed of person. Jordan doesn't really feel like he fits. DC feels somewhere in between. Real quick, pause for horror hydration. Good to get hydrated. They show the catatonic guy so many times that you know at some point he's going to end up moving, which eventually he does, but then he gets shot in the head. And it makes me wonder, like, I don't know, like, how is that working? Like, would they eventually somehow be able to get back into their bodies? Was that the idea of this machinery being turned on, that maybe it could put them back in their bodies? I know that Hunt had said that, like, if he could get it on, they could, like, hold them. And it does kind of like make them fall down, even though they're still like ghost soldiers at that point. But why are the bodies still there and in that form? They have to somehow still be like tethered to their bodies in a way, because otherwise they wouldn't be preserved the way they are, because it's obvious that these are like actual World War II era people. And I mean, you especially know that because you see them in the old film that they end up finding. Gotta love that there's the sound of gunfire outside, yet Hunt doesn't seem to be bothered by it. He goes about his business. He kind of like acknowledges it for a minute. It's just like, and then he's just like, eh. But he doesn't seem worried. So I think that's a little out of character, especially because he doesn't seem to be 100% willing in what he's doing, because he makes that comment later on to DC that these people he's working for will send people to kill everyone's families, basically. So I'm assuming that's a little bit of what's going on with him. So he should probably be a little bit more jumpy. Once Hunt starts talking about the Nazi experiments in more detail, you start to figure out what the real danger is at the bunker, being those kind of ghost soldiers. Up until that point, I was kind of like, what really is this? What type of danger are people in? Once it's more established and things are fully explained, you then understand what the stakes are and how hard it would be for them to actually get somewhere. If it was something like zombies, yeah, they could potentially actually get out of there. But with this whole like ghost soldier thing, way tougher, especially when they're like stuck in the bunker. The killing of the character of Tak is pretty solid, especially the eyeball puncture scene. I did like that. They don't like show it head on. You know, obviously you want to see something like that, being big into gore like me. Maybe, you know, probably not everyone, but they did a good job with like showing it from the other side of the face and like the blood spurt. At least they had that, and I liked it. It was effective. I do like when DC gives Hunt the option of staying by himself, and Hunt backs down immediately. Just thought that was kind of a funny moment that I wanted to bring up. So, the killer ghost soldiers came out of the bodies stacked up in the flickering light room, but the bodies can still operate without the soul? That didn't make any sense to me, really, about how they could, like, have the people, like, the souls are outside the bodies, yet the bodies could still move here and there. I didn't get it. I don't know. You can tell me if you have a theory on it. Go ahead. They tried shooting at the ghost soldiers before and got no results, so why would they then be laying landmines? Really, the landmines would do nothing. I don't know if they were doing it because they thought maybe it would, like, stun them and because of the noise. I don't know. Just don't know. So that didn't make a whole lot of sense to me. Once again, let me know in the comments if it made any sort of sense to you. Pryor acts, the character of Pryor acts like it's all some sort of fun game. Lets you know that he's not really all there. You know, he's more of like the mercenary type when you think about mercenaries. Richard Brake's character was Pryor, who he did a really good job. I think the acting in this in general was quite well done. But yeah, he definitely seems like the type of character who's going to end up dying. Obviously, he does end up dying, and it doesn't really seem like he's caring that much about it. Like, he strikes me as the type of person who fully accepted going into this, I may very well die, and that's fine. It does look cool when all the light comes on and you see the ghost soldiers standing all around them, like in the periphery of like the woods. That's a really cool shot. It looks really good. That's also where the kind of like leached color from the film comes into play as well and helps it look a little more interesting. The scene of Pryor before him getting killed is shot horribly, or during him getting killed, shot really terribly. It's a lot of quick cuts of random body parts moving. That was probably the worst thing in this film, and I don't understand why they made that choice. It's literally so confusing, you have really no idea what's going on, and it just looks like a mess. It is a hot mess. I don't know why they chose to keep that in the film. I just don't get it. As soon as the machine starts to struggle, you know that things are going to turn again, not in the favor of the people who are trying to survive either. So I do like that little moment because the audience just knows. Like, you just know as soon as it starts to like sputter, you're like, oh crap, here we go. Because you're invested in some of the characters at this point. Once DC can't move, you're like, oh man, that sucks. Because obviously he's a character that we, the audience members, actually kind of like. Because he's more like the logical, reasonable person who wants to get out of there. As opposed to someone like Hunt, who's like, no, we have to, finish the mission. And DC's like, I would like to go on more missions, not looking to die here. Because money doesn't mean anything if I'm dead. Hunt doesn't get very far in the air ducts. That's another thing. So I do think it's pretty crazy but cool that like everyone ends up dying, because you don't see that very often in film, and a lot of filmmakers just aren't willing to go there because they always want to have some sort of like hopeful ending to a film. So for that reason, since it's like less done, I'm more happy when a film kind of ends that way. So I was happy they decided to do that. And Hunt, like, for all his effort crawling in that duct, just, like, comes out in a terrible place and he's dead. The ending indicates this is an ongoing cycle. Who are the rich people sending soldiers there? We don't know in particular. And is it to keep the ghost soldiers occupied so they're not able to go elsewhere? That's what I was thinking, maybe, that you get the idea this has been happening, like, this cycle of, like, people being sent to this place because of the team that shows up at the very end, and then things start to go poorly. So my question was, why would this be an endless cycle? So all I came up with, and you can give me your theory if you want to in the comments, which would be welcome. My theory is that they just keep paying to send these teams in, and they're actually not paying in that essence if they just keep dying, but they're paying to send these teams in continually just to keep those ghost soldiers occupied, because that's their whole modus operandi. Like, that's their whole will. That's the reason they're around, basically, is where I'm going. Hunt even says it at one point in the film that, like, they were made to be killing machines in essence. So if they're not killing and they're made to be killing machines, then if they have the ability, they're going to go elsewhere to start killing. So I'm thinking that these rich backers are just sending people there to die, people they deem to be not have very high morals, mercenaries, in order to engage with these guys and keep them occupied so they don't leave the bunker. Just a theory. Let me know your thoughts on that one. Not a big fan of the super drab color palette, but it does end up working to its advantage a few times, like the reasons that I said, like being very like dour and down kind of mood wise, and then also that shot of like all the ghost soldiers with the light behind them. The ADR sounds way too clean at times. Things people say sound like they're on a different environment, or in a different environment than where they actually are. Now, this in particular happens with the character of Pryor, Richard Brake's character. If you're going to watch it for the first time or watch it again, pay attention to when he's talking a lot of the time, because it sounds like he did it in like a very well muffled room, like delivering the line directly into a microphone, whereas everyone else sounds like they're actually in the environment they're in, like they're in a bunker talking, or they're outside the bunker in the woods talking. Like, it sounds like they're in the environment, but Richard Brake's character does not, and that kind of like throws me off. Pretty interesting concept in the end with this film, and I thought it was good enough for a watch. Probably wouldn't rewatch it, because the big, interest is with finding out what's going on, but it was pretty solid. Out of 5 stars with half stars in play, I'm going to give it a very solid 3-star rating. So thank you, Campbell Green, for letting me know about this film. I probably wouldn't have checked it out otherwise, so it was interesting. It was a fun time. So now let me know your thoughts on this one. Put it in the comments. Also, do me a favor, hit subscribe to my channel if you haven't already. It is quick, painless, costs you no money, and I appreciate it very much. It keeps me motivated to keep doing these videos. Also, hit the notification bell button, because then you'll know when I'm putting up new videos, which at this point I'm doing 4 a week at least, sometimes more, which, I'm putting in work. I'm doing a good job. Or at least I think I'm doing good enough. Anyway, thanks everyone for checking out. Thanks everyone for checking out this particular video, and until next time, keep it brutal.